All right, Silja, first of all, thank you for being here. It's late in London and emotional health, physical health, circadian rhythms. You're stretching yourself, so we're just grateful for your time.
Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here. I've been with TransTech for the very first cohort, and of course, we've met in London before, so it's
Hmm.
it's a joy.
And this is my third Trans Tech, and I'm grateful for Nicole. So, quick introduction. I'm one of the co founders at Kaleido Insights, a research firm. I was a presenter at the last Trans Tech talking about well being and HR and employees. And I look at tech trends and how it impacts businesses. Maybe you can introduce yourself as well, Silja.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Litvin. I'm a clinical psychologist and founder of PsyCaps. We use gamification to build evidence-based mobile mental health games for young adults that teaches the psychological skills that everybody needs to be able to build resilience and fight depression and anxiety. So at the moment we're B2B and we're going B2C and we're going B2B now starting December. So we're working with HR as well now.
Awesome. So 2 days ago, my firm we announced a research report was launched with my client Ring Central, who builds collaboration software. And we surveyed 4,000 workers, remote workers, knowledge workers, people who work behind laptops. And many of them worked in offices. But we wanted to find out about their moods, their well-being, how they interacted with others, and their productivity levels during the pandemic. And so this survey was fielded in around July, and Silja got a chance to read that and check it out. So we're going to use this data as a way of a talking point, and she's going to tie it back to the features that she's built in her company because that's what customers need. So this is going to be our journey. So one of the questions, we had a battery of questions to these workers across US, UK, Canada, and Australia. And we asked them questions around their mood. And there was a number of gradated ways they can answer this. And we definitely saw that anxiety was a lot higher, as you might imagine, and calm was not as high. And there was specifically significant more anxiety with the US respondents. But we also saw that their levels of caring was higher, less so than being disattached, despite the fact that we were socially isolated. So, Silja, maybe you could comment on how that is connecting to what you're seeing in the market.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your piece. As a psychologist, I always love these surveys and getting this kind of data, juicy real-time data is amazing. I think that it's kind of just putting its finger on the pulse of society right now. And anxiety is already the most widespread disorder, with about 12% of the population struggling with anxiety at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
You add COVID to the mix, all the challenges that COVID brings with it. And then, of course, in the US, the election, I think that really worried and scared a lot of people. So I'm not surprised at all. But I also think that it kind of makes us look at ourselves, reflect back to our own well-being, and then those that are close to us. Plus, it brings a whole discourse of mental health to the forefront, so people are more aware. And when they become more aware that mental health is an issue, they start questioning about, the well-being of the people that they care about. So I'm not surprised that care goes up as well as anxiety.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I talk to these corporate executives from multinational organizations, they now realize that, well, a few years ago, if they were just a brick and mortar retail company, they realized now they're a tech company. And now this year they're saying, oh, we're actually a healthcare company,
Yeah.
even if they're a retailer, because they have to worry about the health of their employees now, as well as the customers who are socially distancing, walking through their physical locations. So well-being and wellness, physical and mental, has really come to the forefront.
Yeah.
So I'd like to share another quick stat. We asked them, how do you expect your mood to change forecasting into the future in the next 3 months? And overall, people were very significantly optimistic. They felt that things were going to improve. So that was a good stat. But also we asked them about their behaviors. What has changed around self-care during this pandemic period? And we saw that obviously time with friends was significantly down, but we saw an increase in exercise, time with family, and also nutrition and diet. But we didn't see as big of a push when it came to meditation and mindfulness. It was about the same as it was pre. And then also spiritual was a little bit lower than prior. And then purpose, we asked them questions around that. It was around the same as pre-pandemic. Any thoughts on how we can help increase those numbers?
I find that a little bit surprising because, for example, our downloads went up by 160% since March when COVID struck. We have had a flurry of people reaching out, looking for tools like ours, not only for themselves, but for their employees. And I think that, well-being and mindfulness and mental health isn't a nice to have anymore. It is really something that people need to have and that they're looking to reinvest into the human resources. So I'm very surprised about that. And I mean, looking at your research, I think the numbers for mindfulness were actually quite high anyway. So maybe we're looking at a population that is quite at a good place anyway. So other than spirituality, which is definitely a part of well-being, I would just say kind of like keep on the right track. And the positive outlook on the future is a good indicator that, people are struggling with mental health, but they are working on it. So I found it quite optimistic and quite positive.
And it's also great to see when HR departments are providing these tools to their employees. And I think you have relationships with HR departments, right?
Yes, absolutely. So right now on Monday, we are going to launch the largest global mental health prevention early intervention campaign with Unilever's brand Clear. And we're also launching EQ, our emotional fitness game, within their employee population. So we are working very close with large companies and their HR and figuring out like what their needs are, what they're looking for, what their insecurities are, because the market obviously is being flooded with mental health and mental well-being tools to be able to discern like what is good and why is it good and what can I offer my clients. So it's really interesting to see that there's a batch of companies that are kind of really taking this to the next level and being very proactive about it. And then there's a couple that kind of trail behind in the back and say, okay, we have our EAP and that's going to have to do it for now. So there's a split in culture. And I think those companies that invest in the mental health and mental well-being resilience of their employees are going to come out very strong.
That's great. So the next part of the findings in our research, we were looking around how people felt connected. And it was kind of a formula that I was building out in the way we would do the survey. And there was a number of questions to do this. But essentially, the way that I built out the structure was to ask them how well they felt connected to each other, employee to employee. And then secondly, how was the company supporting them and helping them to feel connected? And let's just focus on that part real quick. And so we had a number of questions and we asked, did your company, your employer, help you to feel more connected? And this was to 4,000 folks. And those that did have higher, they felt more connected, that their company was providing that. We saw self-reported increase in productivity and as well as happiness, and they were also healthier. Now the question is that a causation, or did this company already care about their employees? That is something we can discuss. But here's the specific questions that we asked. The companies that helped their employees to feel connected, 50% of them offered frequent communication. 26 was collaboration tools. This one was interesting. 24% offered virtual happy hours. That's not something that companies usually endorse. And then also 22% had pure chat, 15% video games, 14% virtual worlds. So the communication was the real lead in, and then the collaboration tools, and then interestingly, a quarter of them had those virtual happy hours. So I would love for you to comment on relationships, and I know that's part of the feature set that your business product has.
I found that part very interesting in your study, and is that kind of what you coined, the connected culture? Mm-hmm. So companies that...
It's a term that has existed before, but we built the questions around that. So we're not the originators of that term.
Okay. Okay, because it makes sense, absolutely, especially when the company's not actually physically in one place. You have
Exactly.
to have a culture of connectedness. In EQ, we teach the different psychological skills that everybody needs to be able to deal with mental and emotional stressors. And of course, interpersonal relationship skills is key. And that is just anything about understanding your own emotional reactions to other people, understanding other people's emotional reactions, and then being able to respond accordingly. So I think the more a company is able to provide access to tools that teach those skills, the more connected the company is going to be, and the more empowered the employees feel, not just in their jobs, but also amongst their colleagues. And in our case studies that we did with multiple different companies, like we did it with Bosch UK, we did it with Inmarsat, and now Unilever, is that they felt they took things less personally. They felt more connected with their bosses as well as their colleagues, and they were able to express themselves in a way that they felt heard afterwards. And these skills are something that we should be teaching our children in school, but we don't. And a lot of people don't know about them. But once you have them, it will last a lifetime of having deeper and more meaningful interpersonal connections.
That's great. Thank you. And it's great to get your data points on just right on the front line. So the next section that we were probing around was around what type of work did people do when they're working at home and which ones did they self-report as being most effective. And we asked questions around which were the least productive tasks. And of course, we asked in verse, but I just want to get to the point. So the areas where these work from home knowledge workers struggled was 41% struggle with group work, 28% with customer interactions, 18% struggled with information gathering, and then they were more successful with things like task execution and others. So group work was the largest challenge, which makes sense. So I'd love to hear, Silja, your responses and your thoughts, and how would you recommend to these companies to collaborate in group work when they physically can't see each other? The nonverbal cues that really aren't there. Lots of information is being missing from the context of being together. The amount of emails or Slack messages just increases. It's just, and as we know, like Zoom is very fatiguing and other online videos. So what are you seeing?
Yeah, that's actually something that I have put a lot of thought into, and that I've struggled with my team as well. You know, when, for example, you have 10 people in a Zoom meeting and then 3 people want to talk at the same time, and then the audio cuts out, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't always have the right cues, and like you said, the body language, or to just take a break, go outside, have a glass of carrot juice or smoke a cigarette, hopefully not. Just kind of like have those little interpersonal breaks there. I think something probably would help that is very artificial and kind of cuts the flow, but if you have a very structured setup for the group work where everyone knows exactly what they're to do and what they're to um, um, deliver, and where they can go if they have challenges, and they can ask for help, and who they're responsible for and to. I think that would probably be helpful, because if you put a bunch of people into a room, then within a couple of minutes you kind of get a group dynamic, and then these people take over this and these people take over that, and then you have the people that kind of like just trail behind again, and that doesn't happen as seamlessly when it's remote. So by having a very clear structure, I think that would be helpful for teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it will always be a struggle. Like, people are herd animals, and just they need to be around other people, and they need to kind of like be able to build those dynamic situations.
We're separated from our tribes is how I think
Yeah,
about it. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So those are the two main areas I wanted to talk about in the report, but I want to talk about your company and ask you some questions. But then I do want to come back to the research and talk about some of the things we saw around the women and also caretakers. So, but maybe we could talk about EQ. How did you come to the idea of turning mental health into a game?
Well, I learned the hard way.
Hmm.
About 2016, when I came up with the idea to do a mental health app, there, if you Googled depression or anxiety in the app stores, you would come up with maybe 50 applications. Now it's
There's a
over
lot.
5,000, right?
Yeah.
So there has been a jump in there. And we developed an application. We did a clinical trial with it. We could prove that using it over 4 weeks significantly lowered depression and anxiety up to the level of a beta blocker with no side effects. And we said, okay, we're going to go save the world from depression and anxiety for like $9.99. And we discovered the hard way that the world did not want to be saved that way. So the problem with mental health products are the jump off rates. The American Psychology Association says on average, people spend 2 minutes on a mental health app and then they delete it latest after 2 weeks. And that's just not long enough to have an impact on people's mental health. So the audience that I'm specifically most interested in are young adults, the ones that are also, suffering from COVID the most at the moment. And 70% of them are casual gamers. And there's a lot of research that shows that gaming casual is good for your mental health. So we thought, okay, what happened if we not just add gamification to it, which is already, helps retention, but if we actually gamify it. So instead of putting gamification on top of mental health, we're putting mental health into a game. And so far, our retention numbers are through the roof. We have about 17% completion rate of our 5-week course. 91% of our retained users finish the game. And we are, like I said, 160% growth since day one. So I think that gaming is a way forward in the mental health space because it adds this element that is sticky and it adds joy to mental health.
That's great. And also in the study I was talking about, just a small amount of companies had offered virtual games. So I think that this is an opportunity for you to clinch that market.
Yeah.
So I have another question for you. Your website, you talk about it's evidence-based, and you also have some methodologies around the black box effect and randomized control trials. Can you give a quick overview of how your method works?
Yeah. So what happens right now with mental health products is that you have, if you go through a clinical trial, you know that it works or it doesn't work. So you have your effect sizes and your significance, but you don't know what does what. And having a clinical trial is a very long procedure. It's a little bit outdated if you look at the digital world because we have so much real-time data. So what we're using now for our next gen that's going to launch in December is micro randomized control trials where we can put in interactive questionnaires, clinical questionnaires into the game at any point, and we can test every feature that we have in the game. And so, for example, if we exchange a skill, we go, for example, instead of generalization, we use catastrophizing, and we see that anxiety gets lowered by 0.2 more than it was with generalization, then we've already upped the effect size of our game significantly. Plus, we know the effect that this skill has on the outcome. So that is definitely the future of digital pharmaceuticals, of prevention products, of anything, to have real-time data being used in micro randomized control trials instantaneously.
Thank you. And I dropped the links to EQ in the chat, public chat, and also a link to my report. You can download it. So let's go back to some of the data. And so we're both relatively new parents. And coincidentally, we both have twins. I actually have an older singleton as well, but we both have twins, which is a rare thing and a stressful thing too, and a beautiful thing as well. But I wanted to talk about gender disparity and also caretaking. These were questions that we teased out in the data. We did a number of data cuts. All right, so this is the first one, and it's unfortunate that the gender disparity at the workplace is now carried home to remote work. And we found that males versus females, 53% of males had a dedicated closed office space versus just 39% of females. So men have the dedicated office, women do not. Or excuse me, more men do not. It is not universal. Also, we asked questions around mental health. 58% of males felt mentally well versus 48% of females. So 10-point difference. And then when it came to feeling connected, both were rather low, but men were more connected by 15%, 28 to 13%. And then productivity, they were around the same, 32% for men, 27% for female. But across those four, and of course I just pulled out those questions to look at the gender deviation. Men were performing better when it came to remote work. And also, women were struggling with the group work. Men were better equipped. Men were better equipped for that. So this is a problem. So we should, now that we have data, and I'm sure we're all aware of it, what can we do to tackle this? Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, actually, there was something that I found very interesting in your study as well that was saying about the carers. Do you want to mention that first?
Caretakers? Oh yeah, let's go into that as well. So
Yeah.
in additional, this was a little surprising. Caretakers, those are people who are managing other people. Those could be children, those could be elderly. And by the way, the initial response, people say, oh, that's women. It's not just women. Many men were also caring for others, so it's not gender specific. But what we did find out is that those that were caring for others were happier, self-reported, and more productive than non-caretakers. And we didn't ask causation, we don't know, so it could be that they have more time, or I was thinking that they had purpose, a reason to care for others. That's my thought. But I would love to hear your take on that. So those are the two data points. Yeah.
That completely blew my mind. I was expecting pretty much the opposite of that. I know quite a few parents that have toddlers, and having toddlers during lockdown when you're trying to work and you do not have, a caretaker, or they're not in the nursery or something like that, is near impossible. So I actually wrote a piece on boundaries during lockdown and working from home, and I said it works with everyone except for toddlers and narcissists. So I'm very surprised about that. I would say definitely purpose would probably be an issue there. With women, it's a good question. I wonder, that, to be absolutely honest, that data piece just kind of like opened up a whole box of more questions to me. I would love to, dive deeper and just kind of see what's behind that all. I don't really have an answer for this specific question, to be honest.
So I think what is useful, let's imagine we're talking to HR departments or managers, right? Is the way I was thinking about this is the manager or the management team should think about who's reporting to them and understand the social situation at home and the home life situation, and they need to take that into account. Pre-pandemic, you really didn't talk about that. It was deemed in many cases unprofessional. At most, in some cultures, you wouldn't even want to have a family photo on your desk. It just depends on the type. But now this is different. You can see the kids and the dogs and the cats running around behind you. It's different. So it also impacts the group dynamics and group work, and then therefore productivity. So there's this term that has come to light. It's called "bring your full self to work," where it means different things to different people, but it's basically you're showing people what it's like in your real life, in your home life. And I think this is an interesting thing. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, society in a way is leaning towards vulnerability as a strength, and being at a place to say, you know what, I have my 5 cats, 2 dogs, and 12 children. I need to take a break right now. For example, today I was in the middle of a call with my development team, and both of my twins started screaming at the same time, and I could see my nanny on the cam just trying to hold them both at the same time. And I said, "I'm sorry, I need to go," and I just kind of like hung up and I ran to the room and I got one of the twins. So I think being open with that and then not judging, and then of course as a company you have to be very careful not to penalize that, right? So there's this thing where a lot of companies say, okay, we're pro mental health, we're pro family and everything, and then someone is saying, okay, I have an issue with depression and I can't work on Saturdays because I have children, and they get penalized for that. So there has to be a company culture in place that makes sure that these people are protected.
Yeah. And not just protected, but it's also supported and empowered, right?
Yeah.
In addition to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the chat, and so there's people that want to bring your game into their company, and there's people that are mentioning other resources. So I appreciate all the comments there. So we'd love to connect with all those folks. So do you have any other thoughts about where you're headed? I know you have a launch coming up. Share that with us.
Yes, we have a launch in December, and it's going to be 52 levels of gameplay with 52 psychological skills. And we're looking at interpersonal relationship skills, resilience, personal growth, depression and anxiety, and resilience. So those are the psychological skills we'll be learning. It is evidence-based, so it actually works. And it is a fun, beautiful game with a lot of interactive gameplay. Plus, we make sure that the onboarding process for the employees is also gamified so that the whole employee force, if not actually signing up and actively playing the game, they've at least heard of it and know that their company is doing something well, is something good for their mental well-being.
That's great. Congratulations on your success.
Yeah.